Hello, everyone, and I am just now switching on my screen and my microphone as BP3 Bill Pascrell is joining us. So you did not miss anything, Bill. Hi, everyone, we're live, and this is a special occasion, guys, because this is the 18th episode you have been doing together in the past 4 years in the same format, just the three of you switching who is moderating every time. So congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you very
Wow,
much.
I didn't realize it's been that long.
I understand why
Yeah.
you're bringing Jeremy and Bill back. Not sure about me, but 18 is my lucky number.
All right, that's because you have the SBC logo in the back from our friends. So, guys,
It's
like I said,
not a problem.
welcome to this awesome episode. We're broadcasting live on LinkedIn and YouTube. And of course, we're keep saving the recording for the Hipther knowledge base, where you can find all awesome episodes and articles. So, guys, there's no slides, no fluff in this panel, as you know. This is just like unfiltered insights from the people that really know what they're doing. So, guys, I will not take time away from this. We had a great talk with Bill on our podcast a week ago, so you might want to check that out. Promise that I will do one with Jeremy and Martin if they have time as well. So, guys, the floor is yours.
Remember, we did the live one in Seattle.
You guys,
Hey,
how are
Jeremy.
Hey,
you?
Jeremy. Hey, Bill. Jeremy, will you be quarterbacking this as usual, if you don't mind? Because you're the man, we're just your wide receivers, trying not to drop the balls.
Yeah. Sure. Happy to. As everyone knows, these are totally unscripted. So there's no prep goes into this in advance. We just kind of do our usual stream of consciousness, um, uh, you know, comments. So good to see you both. Hope everyone's having a good summer so far.
Not yet.
Yeah. Sorry, Phil.
I'm getting there. I was gonna sport to Bill's dismay and chagrin a Braves jersey to commemorate the 5 wins over the beloved Mets, New York's beloved Mets, on the bounce. But then I've decided that I will dress properly. But on a serious note, it's great to be back. I didn't realize either that this was going to be the 18th time we're doing it, and let's keep that going.
Time
Remember,
flies.
we
It's
did the one
amazing.
in Seattle when we were together?
Oh, that's right. Right. Huddled in some random conference room in the basement of that hotel, right?
For IMGL, yeah.
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 To do that
Amazing.
again. Bell's basement, Jeremy's basement,
Yeah.
our garage.
Come to my basement. I'm there right now. So, all right, guys. So, look, some stuff happening, I guess, in the last couple months. Just, random topics we can talk about, taxes and proposals for increasing gaming and sports betting taxes in a couple states. Responsible gaming. There's some legislation. Some has moved, some hasn't in certain jurisdictions around RG and betting limitations and things like that. We can talk about certainly new states, both for sports betting and iGaming. Legislation pending. We can talk about, as usual, the likelihood of these things moving in certain states. There's a lot to talk about with sports prediction markets in Kalshi, if we want to go there, and certainly sweepstakes. Big hot topic, particularly with California now entering the fray legislatively, and the tribe starting to wake up to push back on it. So, yeah, I mean, you want to spin the wheel as to what topic we want to talk about first, or is there, or a particular state or market that you want to talk about first, or should I just kind of,
How about we
there's
talk about parks? Because I suspect that may be on top of a lot of folks' agendas. So perhaps if I may start very briefly to anchor the debate, and the audience would have heard it from me here and elsewhere. And although, as someone who's lived in the US for be 4 years in October, would you believe it? I appreciate that it might not be the most welcome opening gambit, but I'm started feeling that the initial honeymoon period that the industry has had in this country has sadly, but most certainly come to an end. And it does, and that's the point that potentially may attract some pushback from you native-born Americans. It all starts feeling very much Europe-like. Markets have been regulated, and I'm sure that we at nauseam could be talking about the still persistent lack of regulation on the casino side of the house, and we will, because Jeremy's just put it on the agenda for very good reasons. But focusing on the sports betting piece, a lot of these markets have settled down, and as they mature and in function of that, suppose the regulators perceive, and the legislators rather, perceive this industry as a low-hanging fruit every single time the need to generate more tax revenue for the state coffers emerges. And as a lot of the audience will know as well, that's something that we haven't faced only in Europe, but most recently also in Brazil. I keep bringing my beloved Brazil up. So really what I'm trying to say is that while on the one hand, to some extent, it's somewhat inevitable, especially in this economic climate, I still believe as an industry, and that's really the key message I'm trying to convey here before. I'm sure Bill will want to delve into detail in connection with some of the states, and I'd of course be happy to give my insights and comments on that as well. But I believe as an industry, we need to get even better organized and come up with much more robust arguments when it comes to these debates. Why overturning that particular screw could be very counterproductive, especially when it comes to the black market and the risk that there might be an outflux into the black market. So really my opening gambit is to say that across the industry, we need to yet again do a much better job to shout from the rooftops about the good stuff we've done and we've achieved, and identify and deploy much more robust arguments to defend ourselves against the potential tax hikes. Not just say, oh, well, if you put our taxes up, we'll leave this market, and then we never do, to put it bluntly.
We're starting to see pushback from the operators, though, Martin, right? Instead of just lying down and taking it, and particularly the larger ones, hitting players with, a per bet, surcharge, and pushing the increased tax costs back onto the consumer rather than just eating it or threatening to leave the market.
Yeah, well, sorry, Bill, very briefly to react to what Jeremy has just said. It's certainly a way of addressing it. It's not unheard of, as you both might recall, to link in all this back up with what's been going on in Europe. Many moons ago, the industry adopted the same tactics in Germany, but I agree, and a few other jurisdictions, I agree with what you've just said, that we should be trying to be more efficient in the run-up to any such changes. And then besides that, it's very clear that putting surcharges on customers, while economically speaking, it may be the way to go. Unfortunately, it may incentivize at least some of them to hit their own business into the black market. And I suppose that's nothing that anybody would want to see happening. Bell, apologies if I'm stealing your thunder, but your turn now.
I was just waiting for the cue. You're not stealing anything. I want to thank Zoltan and Hipther. I was just with them in your homeland, Martin, in March for another great Czech Republic event in Prague. Zoltan is really good at what he does, and I enjoy these quarterly meetups. Jeremy, one of the things that I discussed on my podcast with Zoltan, which I really enjoyed and has gotten some attention, is somebody reached out to me at an event earlier this year in Barcelona, which you both were at, and said, Bill, it's really weird. Like, I certainly know who you are. I hear you at a lot of conferences, but I'm not exactly sure what you do. And so I want to do a better job for both my family, my firm, and myself to explain the following. Yeah, I do some sort of easier issues like licensing, compliance, advisory services, that type of stuff. The bulk of my work, as you know, Jeremy Martin, is lobbying. And my frustration is I need to spend far more time focused on lobbying the industry than lobbying legislators. Every operator has their own internal GR team, as you know, Jeremy. And they're very nice people. I know most of them, if not all of them. The problem is when you're in-house and you're managing 50 states, oftentimes plus Canada and even LATAM, there's no way you could be across everything. And I don't care how good your team is. These are nice people, they're smart. But my business in lobbying is a relationship business. It's not lawyering, even though I am one. It's having long-standing relationships and trust. And oftentimes, what the operators do is they wait till there's a crisis, then they fly people in. I'm talking about all of them, the tier ones, the tier twos. We know there's the two giants, and then the rest of the industry for the most part. The most frustrating thing in recent last 18 months has been the tax increases. I met a legislator who said to me, well, why should I care about raising taxes on the industry? They're making oodles of money. And what oftentimes legislators, and even when you go up the chain to governors, perhaps their staffs are a little bit more knowledgeable, they don't realize the massive costs of getting into the market. And the message that I like to convey, and I know I'm preaching to the choir here, is that the legalized, licensed operators are the good guys. They're not the bad guys. They're successful, they're compliant, they're legal. They're paying massive costs with folks like you, Jeremy, who help them with their issues on the legal side, the contractual side, the compliance side. The black market has none of those costs. No licensing, no taxes, no real KYC initiatives, no RG initiatives. That's massive money. It sounds like I'm just going through a click list or talking points. But so the industry, I think, just oftentimes hides under the mushroom and then pops their head out when there's a bad bill that comes out. And by that time, it's too late. Your first meeting with a legislator or a governor should not be with an ask, it should be with building a relationship. So let's talk about what's happened. You've had significant tax increases in multiple jurisdictions: Maryland, Louisiana, Illinois, Wyoming. Now, tomorrow, you're going to have a tax increase to my home state, which is one of the lowest tax rates in the country. And the problem is that some of the operators who could care less about others in the industry said, yeah, that's okay, raise the taxes, but not as much as you want. My position has been no tax increase. I don't think there should be a tax increase. And there's a bunch of local reasons why. Number one, let's talk about the state of New Jersey, which is the first mover for both iGaming and for sports betting, both online and brick and mortar. Former Senate President Sweeney, former Speaker, then Lieutenant Governor Sheila Oliver, and former Governor Chris Christie got it right. The tax rate was right. And then we've seen tax rates come on board, like New York and Pennsylvania in particular, which are multiples of what New Jersey is. And so they're like, well, businesses are doing great there. And why can't we start to creep up to that tax rate? The problem is in New Jersey, we've created 22,732 online jobs. That's from live dealer to compliance people to call centers, and they're good paying jobs. For example, FanDuel just created a new office in Jersey City, not far from where Martin's office used to be for BetMGM. And in the same month that FanDuel brought a couple hundred new people into a corporate headquarters in Jersey City, BetMGM announced that they were laying off upwards of 85 people. And that has more to do not with the tax rate. BetMGM had to do that because they're working hard to try to gain market share, and it's a challenge as the markets settle. So we are going to vote on a bill. The original proposed tax increase by the governor was 25% New Jersey, and we've gotten it down to 19.75 with a couple of, which I'm not allowed to announce until tomorrow, for fear that it could upset the apple cart because it's a delicate negotiation, with a couple of minor concessions that the state has made. Here's the problem. This is not something we should crow about for this reason. New Jersey is now a $55 billion budget. 8 years ago, it was 36. So it's exploded, number one. Number two, putting the jobs aside and all the issues I just raised, New Jersey has a $6.5 billion surplus. The money they're going to gain from a 25% tax increase was just a hair over 400 million. My argument from the jump, and I was defeated not by legislators, but by the top operators who immediately conceded and said, all right, if you have to raise the tax, fine, but let's negotiate. I was trying to make the argument that we should have no tax increase. As a matter of fact, what you should be doing is maybe considering taxing other verticals, some of which we'll talk about, Jeremy. And number two, maybe we should have a graduated tax. So if you're an operator, a smaller operator, and you're not making, 100 million a year in Jersey, you pay X. So 0 to 50, you pay X. 50 to 100, you pay Y, and over 100, you play Z. As a graduated tax, like we do with the income tax, that helps incentivize startups and new entrants into the market. We know there have been a few interested parties, but they haven't come in yet. And they haven't come in yet because you're seeing this explosion of ridiculous legislation to raise taxes. We can also talk, and I don't want to take away to your cadence, Jeremy, but there's this several stupid ideas like banning prop bets, which we'll talk about. That doesn't incentivize market entrance. It hurts the smaller operators, and it also benefits the black market. As you raise taxes and put very restrictive regulations in, which are solutions to problems they're trying to find. Okay. Let me give an example. At the 19.75 rate, should that go through tomorrow, and I believe it will, we're going to be voting on it in committee tomorrow, and then in the full legislature on Friday. We have to have 48 hours notice, so the bill will be released any moment right now, and we'll be able to talk about it more. $68 million out of pocket to the bottom line just in New Jersey for FanDuel. 55 million, 56 million for DK. And then the numbers go down as you get to the Caesars, the Pens, the Hard Rocks, the RSIs, etc., Fanatics, because they have less market share. FanDuel, DraftKings have north of 80% of the market share. And FanDuel and DraftKings, who are great companies, wonderful brands, we all love them. I just feel like they're not thinking this through properly and they're being very anti-competitive. They were happy with a 25% tax increase because they know that a lot of the tier two, tier three operators would probably bag up soon because, you know, a $4 to $5 million hit for a company that's perhaps doing 30, 40 million, 50 million is far more significant than a $67 million hit to a FanDuel, right? And so I've been trying to lobby the tier ones to do a better job at building relationships so we don't go through this year after year. We're going to be back at this issue in multiple states as governors change. You're only going to have 2 changes this year in Virginia and New Jersey. And then next year, you're going to have probably 20 some odd changes as governors are termed out, like in the state of Illinois. We had a new governor in Louisiana, and we had a tax increase. So, and this is not Democrat, Republican, both sides of the aisle are doing it. And so my concern is who is really corralling the industry to deliver the good message that we have? I haven't heard it from anybody, and I know, Martin, you're sick of hearing me say this because you've heard it from me high and low. We're the good guys. We pay taxes. We handle RG. We have consumer protection. We create jobs. And yet, we continue to have the arrow pointed at us for restrictive regulations and tax increases. So those are the top lines. So, you know, 5 states have already raised taxes. Fortunately, many of the states' legislatures are in recess, but this is all coming back around again, if not in the fall, early next year for more tax increases, because we haven't done a good job organizing our message.
If I may, very briefly, lots to unpack there, and as always, all spot on. But what I would highlight is the very final word that Bill has uttered, and that's message or messaging. Within the industry, we all know how the products work, what their key features are, and how they're meant to be taxed. But I remain of the view, at the risk of sounding like a very broken record by now, and of course, we all on this virtual panel have been part of the industry. So I'm using we, for the 3 of us and the industry at large. We still have not found the most efficient way or ways to convey these messages. Perhaps an idea, because Zoltan, you guys have lots of great platforms to do that and incentivize the industry to do that. Just provide as part of the education on the path to building and building up subsequently the relationships with the key decision makers, as Bill's been very pertinently saying. Provide the let's try to provide the very basic information about our products and how they operate and how they need to be taxed from the word go. Forget all the fluff. And I have all the respect in the world to the financial brains out there who can come up with fabulous, phenomenal reports and studies. Yes, these assets have their use. But let's imagine you're in your very first meeting with the new governor, to use Bill's own example. Let's start handing them a sheet of basic facts that explain that we're not whining. We're defending our industry and we're defending the ecosystem. We're not whining about the tax increases just for the sake of it. What we're trying and should be trying to explain is that indeed, if that proverbial screw is overturned, this great industry may land in a lot of hot water and in trouble with the influx into the black market that we've talked about. So a sheet setting out, without numbers even, but line by line, what the categories of costs we're looking at here are starting by the fact that, as I'm sure our audience knows, sports betting and to a large extent these days also online casino are very low margin products. And into what it's left, you need to squeeze in everything that Bill has talked about. You need to look after your people, pay them well, because you want the best people available in the market. You need to do sponsorship deals to promote your brand. You do in most states, with few notable exceptions like Massachusetts, Tennessee, few smaller states, you do need to have a partner on the ground, be it an online casino or a racetrack or a sports franchise. And these guys, for a good reason, they want a cut, and so on and so forth. So in any such debate, and I appreciate a lot of this work has already been done, but perhaps we need to go back to the basics, simplify it at the start, and start building from the bottom up, as opposed to trying to dump very sophisticated reports on the legislators, some of whom may not care about this industry this much. They've got other fish to fry. A lot of them, like me, they're not finance people. So just like me, they may not necessarily grasp all the detail. So that would be, if I may, the key message that I'm trying to convey. Use the information and the data we already have in an even smarter way, even at the risk of oversimplifying them, to kick off the discussions with a view, that's the final point, as Bill suggested, to defending the tax status quo, especially in the jurisdictions where the power may shift to a new bunch of people. And for one reason or another, as I've already said, they might perceive this industry as a low-hanging fruit on the tax side of things.
Brendan, I hate to be pessimistic, but I'm going to be, because we've talked about this a million times among the three of us on these calls and in other settings. The industry will, in my view, will never come together with a singular voice, unfortunately. There are too many egos. There are too many companies in this space that have to be the smartest one in the room. And as Bill said, you have the gorillas, right? Huge listed companies, and you also have smaller startups that have different agendas, different risk tolerances, different business strategies, and everyone wants to sort of forge their own path, deliver their own message in a way that benefits them selfishly, not the industry. And I don't think that a lot of the people in this industry are willing to hand the keys over to someone else to drive messaging. And I just, I agree with you. In a perfect world, sort of, we'd all like the auto industry, right? We'd all, be singing from the same hymn book on, fuel efficiency standards or whatever, because it's all in our economic interest. You're just never going to get there. And then, so what you have is the inevitable. You either have the industry as a whole or individual operators, suppliers, whatever, either not messaging, and as Bill says, waiting till it's too late, till a bill drops, and then running in a panic with some advisors to try to unwind it, or they're working at cross purposes with each other behind the scenes to drive their own specific agendas. I don't have the solution. I'm very good, as you know, you've known me a long time, pointing out the problems, not necessarily suggesting solutions.
Well, Jeremy, there's a current client of yours, and I will not, for proper reasons, disclose who it is, but you'll know who I'm talking about. Their CEO is leaving in a couple of weeks. He loves you, he adores you, and I have a very good relationship with him. And so he's moving on. He's not moving on having anything to do with taxes, but what he said to me is, you know what I'm talking about. He said, Bill, I was together with him in Miami at that summit. He said, Bill, I know that you've worked with a few people like Jeremy to try to create a coalition, an association. and the one that you spent a lot of time and got zero compensation for, Jeremy, which was a great idea. That's what it was called. Just really never grew. And the problem with it is guys like you are smart enough to know, like, you're not an association management guy, right? You're providing counsel, but you can't have lawyers running that operation. It's not lawyering. It's advocacy. There needs to be a sister organization to the American Gaming Association, which is a great, vibrant organization, but has not really done much. It's not a criticism, it's a fact, it's axiomatic to advance the causes of online. Now, part of that was the legacy of Sheldon Adelson. Sheldon's been in heaven or wherever he is for several years. There needs to be an American Online Gaming Association to support both casino, poker, and sports betting online. Not in conflict, but in collaboration with the brick and mortar association of groups like the AGA, number one. I guess I differ with you just a tad in that I remain optimistic that it's going to eventually happen. And your soon-to-be former client, the soon-to-be former CEO, really wants to try to work hard. He's got the time to do it, and he's not scrambling for work to try to create that. I'm hopeful about it, but yet let's turn to another topic, Jeremy, that you brought up, which is the advancement of iGaming, which is far more profitable, as we know, than sports betting. You would want it, I would want it, Martin would want it for both principled reasons and because we would benefit from it with more work. We're still at a blocking point. Rhode Island's the last state to go. Don't buy any of the bullshit that this state's going to go or that state's going to go. Yeah, there's some positives. New York wants to do it. It's not going to happen this year. And you got a governor's race next year. And you got the downstate casinos. Illinois wants to do it, but they haven't been able to advance it. The regulator in Illinois really wants it, but his hands are tied. He's a great guy. I think he's one of the best operators. And there's states like Colorado who would like to do it, but the part of the problem is the industry, as pedestrian observers, oftentimes are like frustrated and they want to piss on states. I say it's our fault and our responsibility to move it, right? We haven't moved it because we haven't come in with a clear, concise message. Number one, your citizens in state X are doing it already. They're betting online illegally. You're getting no tax from that. Your consumers are going into harm's way because there's no consumer protection. You'll create jobs, you'll create taxes. But the messaging often comes in with single operators going in on their own without an industry behind it, which is sort of talking about anti-competitive measures like we had in Jersey in 2010, 11, and 12 when I was advocating for poker stars to get online gaming into New Jersey. I remain optimistic. We have a good message to sell. I don't think it's going to take massive resources, but I do think it's going to take, like herding cats, is getting people to trust and come together, buying into a message, and then letting experts run the association and advance the advocacy.
Here, I can't agree more, I suppose, perhaps controversially, but with your guys' kind permission, let me link it up with another topic or theme that you've raised at the start of this discussion, Jeremy, i.e. sweepstakes. Just for contextual purposes, perhaps at the risk of stating the very obvious, there's an ever-growing number of states that are going after the sweepstakes providers. But as I've said, perhaps slightly controversially, the arrival, the advent, and the rise of sweepstakes, at least in my book, is coming on the back of the wide and broad and large absence of regulation of online casino. Because
100%.
what
I agree 100%.
what would be the other attraction of playing these games that on the face of them are being positioned as social gaming with a twist, if you will, for want of better expression. But in practical terms, let's be brutally candid, there's next to no difference between these games and online casinos. And as I've said, I totally see why that ever-growing number of states would go after sweepstakes, and jury is still out as to how efficient that enforcement will be. But just like we've done in connection with the existing regulated ecosystem, my suggestion would be to try to identify the root cause or even the original sin. And indeed, to be in lockstep with you both, I believe the whole debate about sweepstakes is a perfect opportunity and should serve as a catalyst for the online casino regulation. Because besides all the great assets and features that Bell has already listed, and I mean in the event more states were to regulate online casino, like in a way and to some extent, public funds, public money, it's not wasted, but it's being deployed to counteract the sweepstakes operators. Whereas, to come full circle, if more states plucked up the courage and found efficient ways of regulating online casino, those resources could be channeled there and would ultimately create an even more vibrant regulated industry. And although I suppose at least some of the sweepstakes providers would bitterly, if not fiercely and ferociously disagree with what I'm going to say right now, I believe it's even in their long-term interest to get regulated. So long story short, I believe this could, perhaps even would and should be an elegant way of killing two, if not more, birds with that regulatory stone. It would address the whole shebang around sweepstakes. What is their legal status? Can we take efficient action against them? And it would certainly help the cause of the regulated industry and might, one final point, even help fend off the tax hikes on the betting side of the house, because additional regulation would generate more taxation going to the state coffers. And to Bill's other point, it would create yet more jobs. One of the reasons why New Jersey's fried, brushing aside the debate about taxation for the sake of this argument, is the fact that it's regulated, albeit not at the same time for reasons that we're all aware of, but it's regulated the two key verticals of this industry. The same goes for the likes of Pennsylvania and Michigan. So the precedents are out there. I totally appreciate that there are political reasons, lots of sensitivity around it. But if we're serious, and that is the very final point, if we're serious about tackling the sweepstakes space, and if we're serious about the need to generate taxes in the proper way, and by proper way, I mean by not potentially incentivizing patrons to run away to the black market, then clearly, at least to my mind, online casino regulation is the way to go. One final point that's just come to my mind. It may even be a way of establishing even better working relationships with the tribes that have a ton of excellent experience of having run retail casinos, and they've been trying to venture into the online space. So that way, it may not be a single bullet, but at least in my book, we could address a lot of the salient issues that we've been facing for the last 3 or 4 years by means of this kind of regulation.
You know, what's interesting, Martin, and I'd like to get Bill's take on it, is, you know, either on their own initiative or at the behest of, licensed, casino operators, right? States are, as you pointed out, right, are now starting to crack down, whether it's, enforcement actions, cease and desist letters, legislation pending to ban sweepstakes, rather than either regulating it as something either other than gambling or as casino, or using it as an opportunity to ban sweepstakes, but fill the void by legalizing iGaming. I mean, it's like a no-brainer. And I don't operate in your world, Bill, but like, isn't that the model on the sports betting side, right?
Yeah.
But the industry goes to these states and says, look, it's happening anyway. Everyone's playing on the black market. It's totally unregulated. All this money is being spent in your state. Why don't you license it, regulate it, and find a way to capture the tax revenue?
Yeah,
I just don't get it.
let me get through that, and this is a good conversation. First, if I can, because you brought it up, and I don't think certainly I didn't address it. Getting back to the tax for just 1 minute. Remember, DraftKings had that controversial December 23 announcement that they were going to start charging every customer 50 cents
Yeah.
to place a bet. Okay. And that went over like a lead balloon. I thought it was brilliant because it was sort of like a market test, right? Well, they're going to do it now in the states that have pushed forward these taxes. The problem is what they could have done to avoid any tax increase. And then I'm going to jump into sweeps because I love where that's going. They could have done three things. Because we have a governor's election, okay, with now a Republican and a Democratic nominee. We have all 80 members of the assembly up in a very competitive year where control is up. 4 years ago, 8 Republicans defeated 8 Democratic Assembly people because Jack Ciattarelli almost beat Peter Murphy. The gap was 2.7, whereas when Murphy won in 2017, he won by 20 points. So the state is shifting. All that needed to be done was DraftKings, FanDuel, BetMGM, and throw in others, get 10% of their customers to send a blast email or text message to their legislator, right? The legislators haven't heard from voters, the citizens. They've heard from the industry, but not from the citizens. Two, I don't know if you saw, we got a few what I call panel trucks with video screens on them, and we started driving them around, but the money wouldn't be put in to produce it with amplification that said no tax. Don't upset the apple cart. Don't kill the goose that laid the golden egg. The third point is also a real strong message about the black market. Now, I made a mistake in a meeting, probably at the end of last year it was, where I talked about the black market, and everything I was saying in the meeting was being fact checked. And the one mistake I made, because I wasn't up to date on this, is remember when years ago we used to Google betting online and Bovado and Bulldog would show up, right? I mean, because I did a market test for Martin on the black market with the permission of the New Jersey DGE as a sample or as an exhibit. I forgot that they're now blocked, right? So on Google, right? When you Google Bovado and Bulldog don't show up, it's like Caesars shows up or one of the other operators. That was a mistake. I should have known better. But so I lost a little bit of credibility, and then I explained that I hadn't Googled in a while. The black market is still there. And what would have been a really good result, but nobody wanted to go down the road, is to say, you're going to raise the tax in New Jersey to 19.75, which thankfully is not 25. Dedicate a part of that to going after the black market. And I'd go on forever for how to do that. There's ways to do it. Cease and desist orders are not the way to do it. Banning suppliers from operating in the legal market that also operate in the black market is a good way to try to penetrate the black market to a degree. Now, sweepstakes, the largest sweepstake company in the world, I spoke and met with in Washington, D.C. in February. And they were keen to bring me on board until I said, the only way I will represent you is if you're willing to be regulated. They didn't want to hear it. They went out and hired another company. They've been getting their ass kicked. Not only, as you pointed out, Jeremy, are there attorney generals and others trying to stop them, but legislation is moving in multiple states. And I think it's a mistake because the legislation is going to be bad for them ultimately, because once you ban something, it's very hard to come back and then say, well, now we banned it, now we're going to regulate it. It's very hard to do that. It's like once you raise a tax, do you ever lower a tax? And so that's a big mistake. And you have these massive fines being handed out to companies who, you know, Jeremy and I've represented, High Five Games, paying massive fines. Now, I think, because I get a lot of questions from suppliers and payment processing companies, Bill, if I did work for sweepstakes, am I going to be in trouble? No. As long as you're not operating in a state that's banned it, once it's banned, they need to disclose that to you and you need to pull out. You're fine. You can do that. It's no big issue. But like, I think that the largest sweepstakes company in the world and some of the larger ones believe they're going to make, because they're making oodles of money, a money grab. And then when it's all banned, you know, they'll pull out and do something else, as opposed to a better strategy of saying, we're going to be responsible. We're going to come out there. We're going to have a seat at the table to discuss regulation and taxes. And that would frustrate the industry, because the industries has been somewhat successful at promoting the argument to ban sweepstakes. And I think banning anything is a bad thing, because then, you know, it either goes to the black market or they just leave the state. And I think their strategy is not paying off because they've been losing every step of the way. And California is like another big example.
So California, let's talk about that for a second. So, I mean, that's a huge one. I can tell you from representing a number of sweeps operators and suppliers that, I mean, California is like the prize, right? If a new sweeps operator is thinking of entering the U.S. market, I generally tell them at this point, you know, sort of you've missed the boat, right? Where were you 2 years ago? However, if you're going to come in now, you just need to model, you need to build into your financial projections that, you know, as states shut off over the next, you know, 18, 24 months, your revenue is going to, you know, continue to decline. But if you're okay with that, as you say, Bill, you know, come in, make a lot of money as quickly as possible, and just be prepared to have to shut off state by state by state. You know, California in and of itself, because it's such a huge market. You know, I mean, there are the sweeps operators that are coming in now just focusing on California. I don't even care about any of this, right? But now you have, legislation pending to ban sweeps. I don't know whether that's going to go anywhere, but my understanding is that the tribes now, which we all know, you know, we can have a whole separate session on that, are so important and influential that they're backing that and they're on board. So, you know, California is probably going to get killed if the bill. New York, I think both houses passed the sweeps ban, hasn't been signed yet, right? So now you have like these two huge markets that if they ban sweeps, you know, on the heels of, you know, the obvious ones, the iGaming states that are protecting the industry, Connecticut, et cetera. You know, it's the dominoes are going to continue to fall. Question is, if, you know, I'm going to sort of contradict myself, or at least question my theory that, you know, we should regulate the vertical tax revenue, RG, all this stuff. What does that do to, in the iGaming states, to the existing operators, right? It's almost a version of like in Pennsylvania, you know, the push to regulate skill games as something other than slot machines with a different regulator. Yeah, there'll be some tax, but how does that really solve? How does that really protect the casino industry, right? So now you have this other thing out there that's competing with you, maybe taxed differently, maybe regulated slightly differently. Um, did we do ourselves a disservice as an industry by not pushing for a ban and instead bringing sweeps under the tent as a regulated vertical? I don't know.
Yes,
Question.
I suppose that might be the ultimate bone of contention, because at the risk of stating the obvious, in the states where, let's call it a toleration policy, where sweeps would still be tolerated, they continue operating without the need, the requirement to have a partnership with someone who is on the ground. And I suppose that whole debate, and that's yet another one that we could spend countless hours on, has permeated the marketplace as such. Because we all respect the fact that the leading domain, the principal regulatory model is tethering. Those the same time, as I've just said, one of the upsides, one of the advantages the sweeps have, and perhaps that's why, as Bill said, they're not keen on being regulated. My question would be, and Bill, you're far closer to it than I am, but are they saying that they don't want to be regulated full stop, or are they saying, well, we're not that keen on the classic regulation whereby we'd have to tether ourselves to some kind of land-based operations? We need more freedom. So what I'm putting out there mainly, chiefly as food for thought, is whether there could be some room for maneuver on that front. And I appreciate that, especially the casino groups in some of the states that would have been keen on regulating online casinos, they would be up in arms. No, we want and need and even deserve, and I don't disagree with that, don't get me wrong, a piece of display, but there might be up in arms about this kind of regulatory model. But perhaps if this twist were to be baked in, it may help shift the mindset of not all, but some of the sweepstakes providers. Perhaps I'm just being naive, but while you were both speaking, that's something that's occurred to me, that by now we pretty much take it as an axiom, as a leading principle, that there is tethering. No one's really questioning it anymore, but that's one of the upsides the sweepstakes casinos would have on top of the largely absent regulation. In other words, could there be some room for being a bit more innovative on the online casino regulation side of things?
All they've done is oppose bans. They haven't sat down to have a discussion on being regulated. And I think the industry is going to be, not because of any hard work it's done, but the existing online operators are going to be in a better position in another year or two as states continue to ban. Because I think like I said, it's immensely difficult once you ban something to then regulate it. It takes a generation for that to happen. Like, for example, making cannabis legal, it didn't happen overnight that it became legal. It's very similar. Once you ban something, it's like taboo. I want to shift because we could talk forever about that. Just to throw another topic in, Jeremy, that I know you addressed in the beginning, and that's the predictive markets. I've had meetings with 16 attorney generals, most of them Democrats, who are, filed a lawsuit. There have been some successes. I will tell you this, I'm going to make a prediction. Sometimes I'm right. I think I am here. A lot of times I'm wrong. We haven't been able to have a quorum for the CFTC, the regulatory agency for derivatives, etc., because they have been able to have a quorum. A gentleman that I know, Brian Quintens, who was at the CFTC 17 to 21, a Trump appointment previously, then left, went onto the board of Kalshi, just nominated by the president in February, just confirmed by the Senate last month, and is now the chairman of the CFTC. You will have a quorum and a board meeting sometime this summer, probably July. Maybe it'll slip into August because of other things going on. That gentleman is very smart. I'm a Democrat, he's a Republican, but he's very smart. And I guarantee you, Kalshi, Robinhood, and Crypto.com are going to be in a great position. It will be regulated by the CFTC. These legal suits by attorney generals, most of them, and I love them, but they're motivated by politics. You know, I may not like Trump, but I give him credit for certain things he did. Like, for example, Saturday night, and a lot of my Democratic friends hate me for this, successful mission. He bombed those 3 nuclear sites. It was relatively successful. There's a little noise about how successful, but like, give the president credit where credit's due, whether you like him or not. This is essentially already sailed and sorted, okay? To spend more time, taxpayer money, and resources to go after the prediction markets, and now what's happened in the last 60 days, FanDuel, DraftKings, BetMGM, they're all trying to either partner with the Kalshis of the world or create their own predictive markets vertical. So let's stop wasting time on this and stop pounding the podium on something which is sorted. You're not going to ban it. It's not going to happen. The federal government's going to regulate it. And in addition to the fact that I mentioned, because I said this after the election with you and Martin, and many other venues, Donald Trump Jr. is being paid $2.5 million a year by Kalshi. And that's not for nothing, okay? That is Exhibit A. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that. I'm saying that's Exhibit A, while this issue has already essentially been sorted.
I agree with that. And you know what? The anyone that's opposing it is just going to have to take their chances that in 4 years' time, you know, a new constitution of the CFTC, new commissioners, takes a different policy position. But I agree with you. It's basically done deal for now. So
for at least the next 4 years.
Right.
Till we get a new
guys,
president and new members.
Yep. It looks like we are out of time.
Oh, okay.
That hour went quickly. We didn't get to talk about half the things that we wanted to. That's usually a sign of a good get together. You know?
That's right.
Zoltan's been very accommodating. Normally there's like a 10-minute warning. You guys need to shut up. So thank you very much for that.
Yeah. I really enjoyed it. So this can go on if you guys want to stay for another hour, but I know it's already he's still got stuff to do because it's morning at your place.
Exactly.
Yeah, because otherwise, you know, it's been very enjoyable, but we're now verging towards a fair-ish debate, so we turn it into sort of Housewives of New Jersey, and maybe this is not the platform.
Okay, so yeah, I pitched you an idea we are doing in the messages, and please do not reveal it for the public because it's not tested yet. We are in the beta testing phase of this application, but like you guys mentioned about the education for RG, this would revolve on that, and we are going to use our websites to deploy this tool. Once it's out, it's going to be, of course, announced everywhere. So guys, thank you so much, and yeah, I wish you a great summer, and we'll catch you in the fall then.
Very good.
Absolutely.
Sounds good, Zoltan.
Thanks very much.
Thanks for having us.
Have a great summer.
Take
Bye-bye.
good care, guys.
Stay
Bye,
safe.
guys.